Jared Smith's commitment over the weekend does several things for the Auburn Tigers.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Of course, Locked On Auburn is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Lindsay, Crosby hanging out with us as he does every single Monday. He of AuburnDaily.com and several other places.
Yeah.
Lindsay, we'll talk about Auburn owning the state in recruiting. We'll talk about who's going to step up week 2, or I guess the first full week of fall camp, a few candidates that we're listening and watching out for. But Jared Smith, the number 2 player in the state of Alabama, committing to the Auburn Tigers over the weekend, it does a lot of things. Obviously, it creates a lot of excitement about what Auburn is doing. It continues that momentum. But, Lindsay, it sets up Auburn's pass rush for the foreseeable future. Lindsay, this season, right now, will be the last time that there are questions about Auburn's pass rush entering the season for the foreseeable future. And I cannot stress how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you have a good 1-2 punch this year. Jalen McLeod, Kieran Crawford, right? But then after that, it's a bunch of freshmen. And what I love is there's 3 freshmen you can look at it and say, yeah, I can see how they could all be the next dominant rusher. And I feel like every single spring portal window, every single preview for fall camp, one of the things that I'm saying is you got to have at least 3 guys that you trust that could be starters, because you're going to have injuries. You're going to have those games where you're on the field for 70 snaps. You're going to need those guys. And you have a question right now of who's going to be the 3rd guy behind top 2. But adding him gives you 4 underclassmen that look like they could all be dominant number 1, double team. Everybody on offense knows where they are every single play, guys. And that means that the odds of getting 3 really good rushers out of 4 guys like that are great. And obviously that's not everybody. That's just the biggest names at the position. And so it almost feels like an embarrassment of riches we haven't had in a while from the buck position.
Yeah, we need it. We need it. Waiting in the wing, Amaris Williams, Jamonta Waller, Joe Phillips, all certainly passed the eye test in the viewing windows that we had last week. They look the part. They're just so young. They're just so young, and they need a season to kind of get their feet set. And then, a guy that you really didn't mention there, Keldrick Falk, it's like we all expect him to take that step this season. And you got him a year from now paired with those freshmen. And then Kieran Crawford is expected to be here next year as well, unless he just really overperforms and the NFL wants him a year early, which that'd be a good problem to have. We'll see if it happens. But I just can't imagine the way Auburn has stacked classes with Amaris Williams, Jamonta Waller, Joe Phillips, now committed Jared Smith in this class with J.J. Falk in this class and Hezekiah Harris in the following class. And we're all expecting, Tank to commit as well in the 2026 class. Talk about stacking classes at multiple positions. They're doing it. They're doing it, Lindsay. And so this year, right now, will be the last time there are questions about Auburn's pass rush entering the season. And there are some folks that you talk to in Auburn circles that don't even think there's a question this year about it. I think they're being a little optimistic, maybe cautiously optimistic. I still have concerns about the pass rush just because there's some assumptions in play. There's some assumptions that Kieran Crawford, who, wow, he looks great. Boy, does he look great. But he's still got to transition from playing at Arkansas State to playing at Auburn, much like McLeod did a year ago from transitioning from App State to Auburn. And it took him a little bit. Some of that was injury and unfortunate timing, but it still did take him several weeks into the season. And the assumption that Keldrick Falk is going to take the step forward that we all know he's capable of doing, but he still does have to do it, Lindsay.
Yeah, and I can buy the argument that you have plenty of bodies, right? Like, I don't think Auburn's ever going to not have a player to put out there that is a natural buck. I could buy that argument, but I think your perspective there of the effectiveness is there are legitimate questions because you have one SEC performer now. McLeod's in his second season. And like you said, everybody after that is either new to college football or new to the SEC. And I'll remind everybody,
Right.
Kieran Crawford is incredibly raw as a football in general. I mean, didn't play football until his senior year of high school.
Sure.
He had one year in high school, redshirted, had a good year last year at Arkansas State. He has 2 years of football experience on the field, and he's transitioning to the SEC. So, yeah, the bodies are there. You need development, you need acclimation, but you feel good about the fact that you have bodies. And then going forward, I don't think you're going to have any questions about can these guys perform in the SEC, because you'll have a ton of returning experience and just a ton of potential on these guys. And place we've not been in a long time.
Lindsay, there was a quote from McLeod last week where he said, of course, he was asked about Kieran Crawford, and he said that Kieran was a better pass rusher than he was. You buy that at all? I don't think I buy it yet, but man, let's assume he's right, or let's assume it's close. I mean, this conversation is null and void if he's telling the truth, that if Kieran is at least close to Jalen McLeod, and you have Keldrick Falk on the other side, and then these freshmen having the opportunity to step up over the course of the season, that'd be huge. That'd be really, really exciting.
Everything that I've seen of him from an athletic standpoint, he looks and feels like he's one of the best athletes on the field. And so I will buy the argument that his natural tools allow him to do certain things that probably even Jalen McLeod can't do, right? Like, just because he's so fast, he moves so well laterally and good burst and all his strength and all of that. Obviously, you've got some technique stuff you have to work on. I don't know who was coaching pass rushers at Arkansas State. I imagine it's probably not one of the greatest development coaches in the world. But I could buy that, especially in a position like that, where it's so much beat the guy in front of you and get the quarterback. I could buy that his natural athleticism is so good where McLeod feels like he's right there with me already, because while I probably have better technique and I have more experience with this, he's just a freak athlete. I could buy that. And if it is the case, if it is true, once you get that technique on him, which I've heard Auburn's got some pretty good guys at coaching this technique, all of a sudden you have a fearsome tandem that it's been a while since Auburn had two dudes that good at Buck at the same time.
Yeah, and Auburn is now getting these guys on their roster that have frames and have abilities that you just can't teach. I think Kieran has some traits to him that you can't teach. I think Jared Smith has some traits to him that you can't teach. That long frame and just that natural burst and his stride that he has and that versatility. Some of that you just can't teach. I mean, you're given those long arms and that massive frame that can carry a lot more weight. I think Amaris Williams is in that category too. Keldrick Falk is in that category too. I think Hezekiah Harris has a chance to be in that category too. We've got 2 years left of high school football for him to show us that, I think Tank is in that similar boat. So it's so exciting. It's so exciting because you've seen this happen everywhere else. You've seen it happen in Alabama. You've seen it happen at Georgia. You've seen it happen at LSU. And now you're seeing it happen consistently at Auburn. So Jared Smith, his addition to this 2025 class over the course of the weekend, it eliminates a question for the foreseeable future when it comes to Auburn's pass rush. And that is absolutely big. Who steps up in camp this week? It's going to heat up. We'll tell you next. I'm saying a quarterback right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Lindsay, quick question, Lindsay.
Okay.
Can you imagine buying a part for your car, truck, SUV, a Jeep, for instance, anywhere other than eBay Motors?
Fun fact, I bought a part for my Jeep Wrangler, and I bought it from eBay Motors because, no, I can't imagine doing it anywhere else. They've got the guaranteed fit. I want to make sure this is the right part.
So let me ask you about the process. You said you bought something for your Jeep Wrangler.
Yep.
Did you feel like it was appropriately priced at eBay Motors?
I felt like it was the right price. Yes.
Did it just show up at your door?
The shipping was good. Yes. I appreciated how quickly it got here.
I mean, it seemed like a really solid experience. So you should do the same. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Lindsay, there are several players that I think are candidates that are worthy of being on this list that we're about to throw out there of guys who could step up in this first full week of fall camp for the Auburn Tigers. But I'm going to make a prediction.
Okay.
We said it all spring, and I think we're going to say it all fall, but I think this is the week where it starts to happen. I think we see Hank Brown establish himself as QB2 starting this week. I think we see his ascension to be the true backup quarterback to Peyton Thorne and potential favorite for the 2025 starting quarterback job. I think we see strides to that happening this week. Hank Brown's a name to watch.
Yeah, we don't have a lot to evaluate these guys on as far as in-game performance.
Totally. Right.
And that's one of the issues. But in that small sample size, Hank Brown came out in the bowl game and was slinging it. And in the small sample sizes we have, Holden Gariner was not, right? The moments all looked kind of big for him, seemed to be processing more so than actually doing, right? And I like it feels like the gunslinger aspect of Hank Brown. He's one of those guys that I feel like if you need him to go out there and just rip off 40 passes in a row, he'll do it. Right now, don't know how many touchdowns, how many receptions, how it'll go. Sure. But the kid's got the moxie to go out there and just rip it.
He's fearless. He's fearless. And that's what you want in a quarterback.
Yeah.
The little bit of sample size we've seen of Holden, would you say he's fearless?
That's not the descriptor that I would use.
I don't think so. And it's nothing against Holden. And it's not like he was it's like none of these guys have been put in a real good situation.
No.
But we did see Hank make the most of it. Mm-hmm. And Holden hasn't up to this point. Everything we hear about Holden is how great his arm talent is. And it is. I've seen it firsthand multiple times. I mean, let's go back to the pro day. Was that last year? Maybe 2 years ago. The one when Cam Newton tried to, get back into the league.
2 years ago, yeah. 2 years ago.
I think it was 2 years ago. Everybody's like, well, Holden out through Cam. And it's like, okay, like that might have been an exaggeration, but maybe because Holden is a beautiful passer.
Mm-hmm.
But in a game, it's so much more than that. We all know this. We all know that it's so much more than that because you've got guys running at you and just something changes in your brain.
Yeah.
When you know that people a lot larger
you could die in just a second. Yeah.
Yeah. Are just about to wreck your world totally. And so that doesn't seem to bother Hank. And so Hank is a guy that I think takes a step forward. This coaching staff's aware of it. We'll see if he's there. Give me a name that you think could step up this week in fall camp.
Sylvester Smith.
Love it. I love it.
Okay. It's Caleb Wooden versus Sylvester Smith. You saw Smith do a lot in the bowl game, right? Like he really got a lot of run there. And it's something where Wooden's the tenured guy. I think he played in like all but one game last year and did a little bit of nickel. So I think you could find ways to get both these guys on at the same time. But for Smith, it's just, again, and this is what stands out to me, really, really good athlete. And it feels like he has the athleticism to make up for any sort of mistake that he might make, right? If he bites on a move, it feels like he can recover in time to make the play, clean it up. And ultimately, I don't know if the winner of this battle necessarily matters. If you look at last year, I kind of pulled up PFF and looked at the roster. 4 different safeties played 200 plus snaps last year. Year before that, 4 different safeties had like 300 plus snaps. So they're going to both play. Yeah. But I do think for a position that we potentially thought could be a little bit questionable going into the year, if he can step up and solidify that back end along with Bug Thompson, that means, one, you've got the ability to flex Wooden down to nickel if you need to. You can run a big nickel if you need to with 3 safeties in certain situations. And having that stability back there is a big thing. Plus, additional years of him on the roster versus a Wooden as a junior, you could conceivably maybe have him for one more.
Yeah, I said at the start of the offseason that I wouldn't be shocked if Sylvester Smith would be the winner of the offseason for the Auburn Tigers. And I don't know if he was the clear winner, but I think he is a winner of the offseason. So I'm there with you. He had the highest defensive grade in the bowl game, according to Pro Football Focus, significantly. Yep. Interestingly enough, Caleb Wooden was right behind him. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that battle. But you always say it, depth will work itself out. I mean, you can't have too many talented defensive backs, especially with Keontae Scott now moving to outside corner. You need those inside or interior defensive backs there. And so Auburn's got several now with Sylvester Smith and Caleb Wooden. So yeah, I think that's a great name. I think that's a great name to throw out there for sure. The next one is I'm gonna pivot to the defense. I'll go to your side of the football here. And I want to hear some sort of separation. I want to hear some sort of fierce battle that's happening at nose tackle between Jason Jones and Isaiah Rakes. I want to see and hear kind of what that rotation looks like. And I want to see who steps up. I mean, Jason looks much larger than he has been. I mean, he looks the part. It's just, can he take that next step as a guy who can wreak havoc in the backfield and passing situations, and then obviously stymie those double teams in the interior to allow Asante and, other linebackers behind him to be unblocked. I think he's got the ability to do that. How does he do that compared to Rakes? Their bodies are very different. Jason is a lot more physically imposing. Rakes is closer to the ground, might be a bit more shifty. I can't wait to see how DJ Durkin, defensive coordinator, and defensive line coach Vontrell King-Williams uses both of these guys, because same position, but they are very different players.
And I do think like the two of them combined are closer to 700 pounds than 600. And selfishly, yes. Because I think about these things, like I thought about the pass rush package you could have by throwing Keldrick Falk inside and having those two bucks on the outside. I'm thinking about the goal to go situations when you can put them side by side, both, shaded over a center, and just destroy the center of a line. Like the potential is there to do a lot with these guys at the same time. And then to rotate
fourth
them
and
in.
short or third and short or goal to go, like you say, I mean, assuming you add more defensive linemen with Jason Jones and Rakes, and then Philip Bleedy as well. I mean, and then you got Keldrick and that's just a lot of man. That's a lot of size that you're going to have to move if you're an offensive. Yeah, rugby type stuff right there for sure.
I like that. Last one for me. I'm sticking with defense. A guy I kind of feel like we've forgotten about a little bit, Robert Woodyard, the linebacker. And the big thing for me, a couple things. One, we're going to touch on this in the next segment, but you talk about like players committing and say in the state and things like that. He was the original Alabama flip. Like before it was cool. Sure. You took him from Alabama. Now, that doesn't matter because he came from in-state, and so apparently that's not a big deal, but you did take him.
Sure.
He's an in-state player, quality recruit that you took from Alabama, those Mobile dudes. And
I can't believe Alabama even recruited a player in-state.
Can you imagine spending time trying to recruit a player instead of Alabama when there's so many other states that have much more talent than Alabama? At least 3 states, if not 4.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But keep going on Robert Woodyard for sure.
But like a guy that played in 4 games his first season, only got in 3 games last year, but like in 22, Scout Team Player of the Year. Scout Team's very tough. It's a lot of mental work, right, to understand different defensive concepts, replicate the looks, and all of that.
Yeah, you're mimicking other defenders. Yeah, sure.
And so the intelligence is there. It feels like when you watch him, the athleticism is there. There's just been some things that have kind of kept him from having the chance to do it. And there's a lot of guys in front of him in the depth chart, right? I mean, Keith and Asante and Dorian Mayusi and even some of the freshmen, DeMarcus Riddick and guys like that. But it feels like he's a guy everybody's forgotten about. And he can step up this week. Maybe he ends up being the 4th linebacker over Gote. Maybe he's a guy who can rotate in, in the nickel package and things like that can provide a little more speed and athleticism than, maybe than an Austin Keys or somebody like that.
Well, and I think Robert Woodyard is the guy that you need to step up if you don't want to spend time in the transfer portal at linebacker. I think they're going to have to get an experienced linebacker in the portal just because of the situation. Because in December, after the season, Woodyard will be a redshirt junior going into next year. And then depending on what happens with Riddick and Barber, they'll be second-year players, either true sophomores or redshirt freshmen. And then you'll have some guys coming in as well. And we'll see what happens with Joe Phillips. Maybe they move him back there, but I don't see the need for it. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. But Robert Woodyard's important because you need to figure out, like, okay, do I need to go get a guy that is a stud, almost like your ace middle linebacker, your guy who can really like lead a defense? Or could Woodyard be that? And you want to go out and get another Dorian Maiusi? Because I think it's easier to get. Yeah, I think it's easier to go out and get a Dorian Maiusi or a Gote, like you just said, than it would be to get a Eugene Asante again. And so, Woodyard's going to be that. Or does a DeMarcus Riddick step up or a DJ Barber step up? And it's like, you know what? We'll ride with the younger player just because the upside is so much. I can't really see them doing either. I think they're going to have to go and get a transfer portal linebacker. But I think Woodyard determines what exactly that could look like in the future. So, yeah, I think that's a great answer. I think that's a great answer for sure.
Your top 4 linebackers are all seniors. You got to do something. And
you do. Yeah.
He will decide how much resources you have to devote to that position.
Yeah. And did they go out and add Maiusi and Gote because maybe they have a certain opinion of Woodyard? I have no clue. So we'll see. But yeah, Robert Woodyard's a good one for sure. Thanks. You asked the question, like, can you imagine being like the school named after the state that you're in and not having a top 10 player from it? That's Alabama right now. Let's talk about it in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Lindsay, quick question. Can you imagine wagering anywhere other than our friends at FanDuel?
I would never. I can't. It's the best lines. It's the best everything.
Yeah. And they've got you hooked up when it comes to MLB, which of course you're the baseball guy. They're actually the official betting partner of Major League Baseball. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and the Locked On Podcast Network. When you look at the 247 rankings, Auburn has 8 of the top 10 players in it. The other 2 are committed to Ohio State. And there's real buzz that one of those 2, Naeem Offord, will flip from Ohio State to Auburn. Boy, that buzz is strong. It's strong. It's not going away. We'll see if it happens. Regardless, though, the narrative that's happening throughout the state and to some extent throughout the SEC, there is national discussion about what Alabama is doing. Because it's a wild phenomenon that they've got the number 2 class and nobody from the state. And it's wild because everybody outside of the Alabama fan base and the Alabama media are like, yeah, that's cool, but how are they so excited about this? And it's just the strangest thing to me. We talked about it Saturday when Locked On Bama's Luke Robinson was on. And like the only people saying this are Bama people. Everyone else is looking at this and being like, how are they not concerned that Auburn's coming right now? And honestly, I love it. I love it, Lindsay, because let's just get them. Like over the course of these next 2 years, these next 2 recruiting cycles, I just think I think this problem when it comes to in-state recruiting is going to swell up, and Alabama is going to be behind the 8 ball. Which when is the last time we've been able to say that?
Yeah. For context, and I'm just up front, I'm going to source this and credit this to Charlie Five, who put this out over the weekend. He crunched the numbers. You know him, big number guy. Crunched the numbers. 78 top 100 kids in the state of Alabama from 2008 through 2023. Okay. Alabama got 49 of those 78. Auburn got 10. So in their past, under the previous coach, who, despite what some people at Alabama will say now, is the greatest college football coach of all time.
I thought it was Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Got
they prioritized getting the most elite kids from inside the state of Alabama to come to the flagship school of the state of Alabama. All right, 78 across that span, which, if you can't do math that well, 08 through 23 is 15 years. So that's just over 5 a year. 24 and 25 together, there's 16 top 100 kids. So, 8 a year there. Auburn has 10 of those. Alabama got 4, and this year they don't have any of them. And so, here's the thing. Yes, it's a number 2 class. A lot of your recruits are from the West Coast and things like that. But Hugh Freeze and this Auburn coaching staff have gone in there and been able to rebuild relationships and build new relationships in the state that 2 coaching staffs ago, they struggled to have a relationship good enough to get these kids over Alabama. Right. And the last coaching staff didn't even try unless you were at Auburn High School. And even there, they didn't get the top kids out of there. And so when those pre-existing relationships dry up on the West Coast with those kids, those 25, 26 kids you've been recruiting for a year or 2 now, when those relationships dry up, Hugh Freeze is going to already have the state of Alabama locked down. He's built the relationships. Kalen DeBoer has not. And those schools probably feel like Alabama doesn't care because the entire Alabama ecosystem, the media, the fans, are all saying these in-state players don't matter. They're not important. What's important is going national. And so now in 2 years, Alabama's going to have to come back to those schools hat in hand and say, we were wrong. We're sorry. Give us another chance.
Well, I also think there's this element of these kids are all online for the most part. I'm sure there's a few exceptions, but they're all hearing and seeing this Alabama fan base say that the state doesn't matter anymore. And it's just kind of this weird, I don't know, they've kind of boxed themselves in a corner now up to this point, which is, it's fine by me. I can't believe this is happening. It doesn't really, it's such a bizarre stance to take, but hey, I'll take it. So, Jared Smith obviously over the weekend solidified the 8 of the top 10 according to 247.
After the 2025 class is officially signed, do we bring back the state of Auburn branding?
Oh, I think you should do it now.
I mean, that should be it. Put the billboards up tomorrow.
Again. No, you have to beat them on the field first.
Okay.
I think you've got to beat them on the field before you can say state of Auburn.
If you beat them on the field this year, and then you sign the class at signing day, that's the theme for 2026. The 2026 season is state of Auburn. We're bringing it back.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you can beat them in Tuscaloosa, I think you can do whatever you want. Sure. Can you imagine momentum if that happens? It's a big if, but boy, that would be incredible. No question about it. Lindsay, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. You can find all of the writing if it's Auburn Baseball, auburndaily.com. If it's Atlanta Braves, bravestoday.com. And also First Pitch, Monday through Friday on YouTube. Daily MLB recap show. We're having a ton of fun talking about ball.
Yeah, it's also available wherever you get your podcasts as well. So be sure to check that out. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.